Sure. My name is Craig Glaser. I grew up in Johannesburg, South Africa. I was born May 13th, 1984. I have two younger brothers, Daniel and Ryan.
What were your parents' names?
Parents' names are Anthony Glaser and Naomi. My mother actually passed away when I was 12 years old. My father remarried to a lovely woman, Michelle Glaser. She fully adopted myself and my younger brothers as well when we were kids.
Where were your parents born?
My father was actually born in northern Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe, and he emigrated to South Africa during his younger years. I'm not exactly sure when. And my mother grew up in South Africa as well.
And how about your father's parents, grandparents? What were their names?
Frank on my father's side, and on my mother's side, Morris Sher. Frank actually served in the South African Army as well. If I remember correctly, he was a tank commander. And my father actually served in the South African Army as well, because they had conscription, similar to Israel. And he served as a tank commander as well.
So where was your father's parents born? Where?
I'm not entirely sure. Okay. I believe either in South Africa or Zimbabwe.
Okay, but in Africa?
Yeah.
How about your mother's parents?
South Africa as well.
Okay. Do you have any idea when or who was the relatives that came from Europe, when that was?
I believe it was.
When did your
I believe it was
come?
the early 1900s, originally from the Lithuania area. Unfortunately, more than that, we don't know much about my family. So I've explored tools such as, I'm blanking on the name now, the one that you do your DNA, the Ancestry.com, where you can run the DNA test, and it shows that my lineage comes mostly from
Do you have an idea why
Lithuania.
They immigrated? They left Europe?
Unfortunately, I don't. My family doesn't know much about, apart from one or two generations, where everyone really came and originated from.
So, you were, can you describe your childhood?
Sure. I originally started off actually in a non-Jewish school, in a public school. It was normal South Africa. I didn't really feel the feelings of apartheid around me. But I do have memories of black and white segregation. As I grew older as well, I do have memories of no segregation. And I can obviously now, being older, put together that that's when apartheid ended and the people were kind of brought together. As I mentioned earlier, my mother passed away when I was 12 years old. She actually passed away from childbirth complications with my youngest brother, but she passed away 4 years after the complications. And one of her wishes or dreams was that we'd always go to a Jewish school and get a private Jewish education. So as she started to get sicker, my father enrolled us in King David School in Sandton, which is a private Jewish day school in South Africa. And I continued on to their high school, which is King David Victory Park High School.
So, you immigrated to Israel when you were 18 years old?
18, almost 19.
By yourself?
Correct, by myself. I'd never been to Israel before.
So what were the circumstances that caused you to leave South Africa?
I'd started studying in South Africa. I was in my first year of electrical engineering, and I actually got held up, hijacked pretty badly. And it got to a point where I was like, there is no future for me in South Africa. This is not a country that I want to grow up, support, or that I see myself continuing my life in. And having gone to a Jewish day school and having that love for Israel and the Jewish community, my first option really was Israel. And I figured, you know what, why not? Let's emigrate there, give it a try. At the end of the day, there's nothing to lose. It's a good fresh start. And why not? I'm up for a challenge.
So, getting back to the incident, it seems as though it was a radical decision on one thing. Was there more than this one thing that caused you to motivate you to leave?
Not really. I figured, you know, I'm only 1 year into my studies. I can continue in Israel or elsewhere. I knew immigrating to Israel that I'd have to serve in the army, which I was fine with. I knew that I'd get reduced fees for university, having served in the army. And I figured, you know, why not? And my parents were supportive as well. I think it would be a good start and a good opportunity for me to kind of get out of South Africa as well.
So when you went to Israel, did you have any family there to stay with?
I had no family whatsoever. Got off the airplane, I was met by an emissary from the Ministry of Immigration. They directed me to a taxi and they said, this taxi is going to take you to a kibbutz. Best of luck. Have a good day. So
they knew you were immigrating.
Yes, I emigrated through the Jewish agency in South Africa, so they set up everything. So the taxi took me to Kibbutz Nan, and
Where is that located?
It is maybe 10 or 15 minutes just outside of Rehovot in central Israel. I did a 6-month intensive Hebrew Ulpan there, so it kind of welcomes you to Israel, teaches you a little bit about the culture, and really tries to get you to learn Hebrew, and that's the primary focus. The only problem is you have lots of foreigners from overseas, so you learn Hebrew in the class for 4 or 5 hours in the day, and then afterwards everyone's speaking in English. So while you learnt a little bit, it's not really as immersive as it could have been. After that, they kind of usher you out the door and they try to guide you where to go, but you're really on your own to figure it out. And I ended up working with the South African Jewish Agency in Israel to find housing in Tel Aviv. And through other neighbors in that housing community as well, I was able to find work for a IT startup in Tel Aviv. And I started getting involved with the IT community and just with a lot of the Olim and new immigrants that side.
So what year was this?
Wow, years now. I want to say that would probably be 2004, 5.
So what was the IT community like in Israel compared to today?
Today, obviously, it's more advanced, and Israel is really known for IT startups. At that time, it was still trying to blossom and grow, and there were a lot of growing pains. But that also just comes with the general technology of the era. Technology, the internet, everything's more accessible these days compared to back then. So it was the challenges of the early days of the internet. During that time as well, I got my initial army induction papers. And being a new immigrant and still struggling to not only learn the language, but read the language, because speaking and reading are very different and can be more challenging. My managers and my friends through work actually helped guide me through my induction process and translated all my forms for me. You need to go do this, do that, take this with you. They're going to ask these questions. If you need help, let us know.
So what was how long were you in the service?
So I was in the service for 2 years, 8 months. They base it off of the age you are when you enter the country for the first time. So I was 18 and a bit, almost 19. So I got a slight reduction from the normal 3-year service. So
you did basic training in a certain
where? So I first did an army Ulpan, which is again to welcome new immigrants into the army, kind of help enforce their Hebrew language, and guide them through some of the core principles that are going to be taught in the army, just that normal Israelis might have known from their parents or friends serving. So that was a 3-month program at Mikveh Alon, which is in the northern part of Israel. And then from there, I went into the combat engineers, or Handasa Kravi. It is a unit that not many people actually want to go to, but it was my primary request. It was my first choice, so I was very glad.
Why don't they want to go into the engineers?
They specialize with landmines and explosives, and there's lots of stories of people losing fingers and limbs. So it's very difficult for them to induct soldiers. But I figured, hey, I have 1 and a bit years of electrical engineering experience. Engineering, it'll all make sense.
Did it?
Here and there. Yes and no. It definitely gave me a better understanding of some of the core concepts for working with landmines and explosives.
So what's the process of once you find there's an area that might be mines, how do you find them, and what do you do then?
It depends on the type of mines and the type of situation that you're in as well, because there are always anti-tank and anti-personnel mines, so they're handled very differently. Anti-personnel, obviously more sensitive. You've got your metal detectors, use a knife to kind of like feel the area and very slow movements. Anti-tank, obviously it takes quite a bit of weight to set them off, but they can be just as dangerous, especially if they've been sitting there for many, many years, which most Israeli mines have, and the outer casings have degraded over the years.
Did you have to, were you ever involved in deactivating mines?
Yes.
Where was this that you did that?
Along all of the borders. As the mines get older, especially the mines from the initial early days of Israel, they have to be replenished and refreshed every 30 years. So we'd uncover all the minefields, detonate them, and then
these are Israeli mines.
Correct.
These are these are not mines from another country.
No, these are refreshing Israelis' mines along their borders. So part of the training that we went through, we go through 4 months of basic training, 4 months of specialist training, and then I went through a commander's course as well. So I was a Mefaked Kita, which is a staff sergeant. I commanded a squad of 8. So I had 4 months of commander's training, and then I commanded a group in the Vatikot, which is the older, more, I'm trying to think of the word, I apologize, permanent force within the combat engineers. So I started off in basic training and specialist training in the 601st Division of the combat engineers. And then after my commander's training, they transferred me to the 605th.
Was there any, during that part of the military, let me just stop.
Sure.
After your 2+ years, then you were no longer active. Was there any reason you had to come back as a reserve? Were you activated again after that?
Yes, I was activated twice, but only called up once for reserves. I was activated just before I was going into college for the second war in Gaza. And
what year was that, dude?
Oh, I'm terrible with years. But I actually do have a little bit of a funny story there as well. So I had just met my now wife, and we were friends. And I was visiting a very good friend of mine in Ranana. And he's like, hey, my girlfriend's got this friend of ours over as well. Why don't you come meet her? You know, we're just having drinks, just relaxing for the weekend. So I went and we started talking. And at first, she actually didn't believe me that I was over 18. Because I looked so young, so I had to show her my ID. And as we started speaking, and we'll speak about what is going on at the war and how the situation was becoming more tense. And then we started speaking that I got my call-up papers as well. And at that moment in time, and she tells the story a lot better from her perspective as well, she really realized that she had feelings for me, and that she was really worried and didn't want to see me go off to war and God forbid something happen, especially being a commander and just being the personality that I have, where I always go headstrong and head first before anyone else. And she likes to say that from that moment that we first kissed, she knew that I was the person that she was going to marry. So she always likes to thank Gabi Ashkenazi, the chief of defense at that time, for getting us together. And she actually toasted to him at our wedding. Just because if I hadn't got my call-up papers, she wouldn't have realized that she had those feelings. The funny thing is, 2 days before I was meant to go down to my post, they cancelled my call-up papers. But then after we got married, I want to say, it was actually after we got married, 2 days after my honeymoon, I was called up for 30 days of reserve duty.
And where were you? You had to go to a base?
Yes. We went again to northern Israel, and it was refreshing minefields along the various borders.
So during the second Gaza, what do you call the second Gaza war?
Yes.
You weren't involved in any kind of military action against anyone from
No.
Palestine,
No,
Palestinians.
during my service though, I was involved in the second war in Lebanon,
Can you
along
describe
the
that?
northern border. Um, it was a tough
First
time.
of all, just tell me what the second war in Lebanon was, and approximately when do you think that was?
So that would have been roughly in late 2006,
Right. So
2007.
what happened?
There's obviously an initial conflict along the war. That was when the Israeli soldier was kidnapped.
You know what his name was?
I'm blanking on names right now. Gilad Shalit. Thankfully, eventually he has returned many, many years later. But that's what really kicked off that war.
So Israeli soldier is kidnapped, and then what pursued after that?
So obviously Israel launched a full incursion to try and rescue him, and it escalated. It's known for being one of the few wars that Israel wasn't really prepared for and couldn't really support their soldiers quick enough. So it was a tough time. It was one of those times where we were always short on supplies, short on really all of your basic necessities. But thankfully, with the training that you have, you learn to conserve everything that you have and really utilize it when you need to utilize it.
So what did Israel do in their what was their plan, and what happened?
I don't know what the overarching plan was, but what our plan was, being with the combat engineers, there's the saying that the combat engineers are always the first to go in, because along any border, be it your border or your enemy's border, the first thing there is landmines. So it's the job of the engineers to really clear the way and open the path for the other forces. So that was our primary mission, just to open the channels for the rest of the tanks and the other infantry units to be able to get into
How long a period of
southern
time
Lebanon.
was that event?
We had a day and a half to clear our paths.
I'm sorry, what was that?
We had a day and a half in order to clear our
But I mean
paths.
the entire event as far as the war is concerned.
I don't remember exactly how long the entire war was. I want to say it was about 4 to 6 weeks. I was up there probably for about 2 to 3 weeks.
And how did it end?
I can't speak to that.
Was there a ceasefire? Was it?
If I remember correctly, there was a ceasefire.
Had there was a first war?
Yes,
With Lebanon?
there's many, many years ago. I don't remember the exact year.
Okay. So
Before my service.
okay. So while you were living in Israel, were there other events that occurred as far as Israel, as far as incursions, and far as uprisings?
There's always the general uprisings along the borders, especially along the Gaza border and in the south with the southern communities. I do remember a time when I was posted in the south as well, and our primary task was really just to support the southern communities while they were having rockets fired at them from Gaza, and just ensuring their safety and just really being there to show them that the country and the army is with them and to support them with any need. During that time, I think there were rockets being fired, I want to say every 15 to 20 minutes, with the Tseva Dorm sirens going off and having 15 seconds to...
Where you were living, that's correct?
Where I was posted at that time.
You were
in the
posted,
south.
okay.
Helping the communities rush for cover and just being with them as well. So where I was posted, the community that I was with, we were actually staying in their houses with them. And whenever the sirens would go off, we'd help get all of them and their kids and their families into the shelters. And then if any rockets fell that hadn't detonated completely, being with the engineering corps, we'd take care of those as well.
Did you have to do that?
Yes.
So what was it, can you remember a particular incident that happened in, a rocket had fell, it wasn't exploded, and what did you do?
We usually secure the area and then we detonate the rockets.
How do they do that? How do they go about doing that?
We utilize various explosive devices, be it a C4, Comp B, or a TNT.
Were there incidents where you where did you live otherwise? After you got married, where did you live?
After we got married, we lived in Ranana for a few months. And when we actually got married, my wife was in her second year of college, and I was in my first year. Thankfully, we're actually studying at the same college, the IDC in Herzliya. So we'll end up moving from Ranana to Herzliya, which is only maybe 15, 20 minutes. And really for the rest of my time in Israel, we lived in Herzliya. But throughout my experience living in Israel, I kind of moved around quite a bit, from the kibbutz to Tel Aviv to Jerusalem to Rehovot. I lived a little bit in Ramat Gan as well. So I moved around, but within central Israel.
Were there any incidents where you experienced rockets being...
Apart from being in my service where I was posted within those areas, thankfully not.
Okay. Do you have were there any friends of yours that were living in urban areas or suburban areas or the kibbutz that also got attacked? The rockets fell on them?
Yes, my friends who lived on kibbutz Nan, they were having rockets fired at them.
Was there anyone injured?
Thankfully not.
So, when did you leave Israel, and why?
Sure. So the why is easy. So easy and difficult at the same time. So my wife had quite a bit of family in Israel. I didn't have any family whatsoever. And our firstborn son was actually born in Israel. And when he was born...
His name is?
Yoav Reuben.
Okay.
So when he was born as well, we realized, we don't actually have much immediate or close family, and we really want him to grow up around his nephews, nieces, aunts, and uncles, so he can really grow up and know them. And family is important. And a lot of Hillary's family really lives. So we live in Ward Lake right now. Most of the family lives within 2 or 3 miles of one another. So within Ward Lake and Novi as well. And it's fantastic that everyone sees each other at least once a week, and that all the cousins know each other. They're all really close in age, and they're all going to grow up together, know one another, be close, and just have that special bond.
So this is the room where they bond, right?
Yeah, this is the playroom. It's actually tiny today. We're lucky. Generally, it's a lot more chaotic, and you're trying not to trip over Legos.
So, was there ever a circumstance where you considered going back to, or could you go back to South Africa?
So that's actually an interesting question as well. So South Africa has a law that not many people know about, and they kind of forget to tell you about it when you emigrate from South Africa. It's called the Mercenary Act, which forbids any citizen from serving in a foreign army. So as an Israeli citizen, you serve in the Israeli army, and you're actually not allowed to return to South Africa. And if you do, there's the risk that you might be arrested. With the climate in South Africa against Israel, and South Africa being pretty anti-Semitic these days, there's a lot of NGOs that when soldiers return, be it to visit family or later on in their life, kind of alert the police and try have them arrested at the airport. And I actually had a good friend of mine a few years ago arrested at the airport, and the South African embassy had to get involved in order to get him released and fly him back to Israel. So I actually haven't been back to South Africa in many, many years. Last month, actually, I was naturalized as an American citizen, which I'm very proud of. And now with that, it's actually a lot easier for me, if I need to return to South Africa, not as a South African Israeli citizen, but I renounced my South African citizenship, but return as an Israeli American.
So that would be more acceptable.
Correct.
How about your parents? Have you? When's the last time you've seen them?
I haven't seen my parents since my eldest was born in Israel, which would be about 7 years ago now. They're getting a little bit older. My mom's not as healthy as she used to be, and it's a little bit difficult for her to travel.
Parents come to visit you in Israel?
They visited once during my eldest bar mitzvah. Sorry, not bar mitzvah, bris. and unfortunately they haven't been able to be in trouble to travel since.
You come to the United States. Your first child is what, 1 year old?
No, he's 7 years
I
old.
mean, but your first child.
Oh yes, when we moved over, Yoav was 1 year old.
Right.
We were staying with my in-laws for about 6 to 7 months, just so we could get set up on our feet. And during that time, we actually got pregnant with my now youngest son, and that was kind of like a kick in the butt for us to move out of their house and get going and find our own place. And this is our lovely house in Ward Lake. And for that, we wanted really that to be symbolic in my youngest name. So we named him Ori, which in Hebrew translates to my light, because he kind of like lit that fire under us to get us up and moving. And he's a bundle of energy, joy as well. At the moment, he's actually got 4 staples in the back of his head, just because, boys will be boys, and he cracked his skull open. But he's happy, healthy, and crazy as ever.
Goodness.
I myself, I work in advertising, in analytics, in automotive as well. If you're in advertising and you're in Michigan, you're kind of naturally involved in automotive. It just is what it is. My wife works in advertising as well, and at the moment she's actually trying to start her own company, and she's been going at it for about 3 months already, and it's going really, really well.
And you have another child too, right?
It's just the 2, Yoav and Ori.
Oh, okay. All right.
2 kids, 3 dogs. We actually, 2 of our dogs were from Israel, and when we moved over, we brought them over with us. We figured that they're like our kids, we're not going to leave them there, and we did all the paperwork, whatever had to be done. You could only actually fly special airlines to have them brought over, and they're going well. The one dog is now 14 years old, and the other's 9.
Here's an interesting question, and it may be, you may be too young to have an in-depth answer.
Sure.
But you were born in South Africa, where your parents live, and you had to leave there, flee basically. You felt for your life. You go to Israel, and you met your wife there, and now you've moved to the United States, which is how long ago you've been?
7.5 years ago.
So if somebody did a surgery and they opened you up, figuratively speaking, that's the right word?
Yep.
What would they find? Whose flag would they find in there? Or more than that, would they find more than one flag?
I think it would mostly be American and Israeli. And I say mostly Israeli more so than South African, because in Israel I feel like I really matured, and it's where I grew up and found myself. And it was through all the situations that I was in, especially emigrating with no family and being by myself, that I was really able to find my own 2 feet, stand on my own 2 feet, and figure everything out. Israel's not a easy country to figure out for most people, yet alone a new immigrant who's alone trying to figure out the language. And I feel like I succeeded really well, and I succeeded going through the army, becoming a commander as well, excelling in my service, having a really good career that side, finding an amazing wife, and everything just worked out really well. And it is all of those challenges that built up the strong personality that I have, in order to make it easier for me to succeed in moving to America and really getting integrated with the culture and the community here as well. And part of being ingrained with the community, my wife and I really like to give back to the Israeli and the Jewish community. And over the summer, we're actually involved in a lot of programs hosting Israeli kids. So right now, actually downstairs, we have 2 young girls from Israel who are Israelis who just finished their military service, and they're volunteering at the JCC Community Center for the summer camp program as camp counselors. So my kids are going to the JCC camp program as well, and they get to go every day with these girls and experience a little bit of an Israeli culture with them as well. And not only that, this summer we're hosting 5 kids for the Maccabi Games in a few weeks' time. And then as soon as the Maccabi Games are over, we're involved in another program called Shin Shin, which is Israeli kids who are post high school, just before their military service. They come to Israel for, they come to the US for about a year, and we're going to have a young man living with us for about 6 to 8 months.
Very wonderful. Very
Yeah.
nice.
So it's good for me to be able to practice my Hebrew. The kids are being forced to speak more Hebrew as well, but it's also really a great way to give back to the Jewish and Israeli community, to show these really great kids around the US and what there is, and that outside of Israel, what it's like to be Jewish. And
Tell me, your wife was telling me that the children, the girls, were told certain things about when they come to the United States, certain things that do's and don'ts. What was one of the don'ts?
so one of the don'ts is just so that they're not challenged by anything that they say. For example, don't wear any shirts with Hebrew writing. If you go downtown Detroit, try not to speak Hebrew just so you don't raise attention. In my mind, I understand obviously the security of the program that they're on, and they have to put an overarching umbrella to look out for who they are. But I've always been of the mentality of be proud of who you are and fight for who you are. It's that fighter mentality. So I will always speak Hebrew where I want. Just be natural with who you are, and if anyone challenges you, I welcome the challenge.
So tell me, what is it like being in the military in Israel from the standpoint of camaraderie amongst people that have been or presently in the IDF?
So I always had a really great connection with not only my soldiers, but my commanders that were above me, and as well as my fellow commanders when I was an officer as well. When I was an officer, I would go to all my fellow commanders, knowing that I didn't have family in Israel. They would invite me into their families for all of the Chagim, for Pesach, Sukkot, Rosh Hashanah, and it was always really great and welcoming to see them really take care of me as well, knowing that I was a Chayal Boded, or a lone soldier with no family in the country, knowing that I had them as my supportive family as well. But then also even my soldiers, just the support that they gave me. I had a lot of my soldiers and my fellow commanders at my wedding as well. And our wedding was a little bit different. We didn't even have really assigned seating, so we just let everyone sit wherever they wanted. And the table that Hillary and I landed up sitting at ourselves landed up being all my army friends. So they're the ones that really joined us up front and up center for that special day. My wife and I have a great story as well. Shortly after we met, we were traveling up north, going on a tiyul or an excursion, and we're just walking down the road, going from one of the restaurants to another, and a car slams on its brakes, and 3 guys jump out, and they're like, "Oh my God, it's Craig, it's you." It was some of my fellow soldiers from a few years back that recognized me driving and felt that they had to stop right there and then in the middle of traffic to say hi. Which was fantastic. It's something that you really won't experience here, but it's just that bond that we always have, and you can always go to each other, phone each other, and just catch up. And every few months we do speak and try to catch up and stay in touch as well.
So you find that is universal in the Israeli people that were in the IDF?
Absolutely. That was absolutely my experience as well, with the welcoming and the bond.